Back in 1969, I started at the university, and I took one of my first semester. One of the classes I took was equivalent of Economics 1. And I remember we had an instructor. He was an interesting guy. And one of the things he used to tell us was that the fundamentals of economics were actually basically simple. He said what economists often do is to make them seem much more complex. So you have to think you need to be an economist to understand this stuff. But he said the fundamental rules of political economy were simple and direct and almost intuitive if you thought about them. And over the years, as I've worked, now I teach history, but I do military history. A lot of it ends up being comparative, and a lot of it involves money, trade, stuff like that. So you have to understand some of the basics of how economics works. And that's what I've done. And to help my classes along the way, I came up with this set of simple rules to help them understand what was going on. And that's what I want to talk about now. And there's basically four of them. The first one is the most basic one. If you tax something, you get less of it. Now, students will look and go, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, okay, we want people to smoke less. What do? Well, we tax cigarettes. We want people to drink less soda pop or stuff like that. What do? You tax that. You want people to drink less? You tax alcohol. You want people to drive less? You tax gasoline. We all understand this intuitively. Oh, yeah, that's right. If you tax something, you're going to get less of it. What happens if you tax capital gains? You're going to get more capital gains or fewer capital gains? Well, obviously, you're going to get fewer capital gains. You're going to get fewer capital investment. And yet, back into the last administration, I remember, watching people from the Obama administration, including I think Obama himself, at one point say, we're going to increase capital gains taxes, but we're actually going to end up collecting more money because it's actually going to stimulate the economy. Well, no. If you know anything about economics, that's not how it works. Now, you can argue we should have raised capital gains taxes, or it was unfair to have lower capital gains taxes. All those are, legitimate arguments. But to make the argument that you're going to raise capital gains to get more capital investment, it just doesn't fit. I mean, then how come, we tax cigarettes, more people smoke? It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not how economics works. So, that's one of the reasons, the economy was so crappy for so long. And what happens when you tax income? Any kind of income, income taxes. You're going to slow the economy down. You're going to get less income generation. That doesn't mean that, nobody's going to go to work. I mean, obviously people have to go to work. They have to eat. They need to pay their mortgages and everything. They'll keep working. But there are other people who won't. And, I had a case a couple of years ago myself. I'll give you a classic example. I'd finished a book with a publisher. They wanted me to do another one. And they told me what they wanted, but they wanted it fast. They felt like they needed this out within like less than a year. It means, or at least written and turned in less than a year. And they offered me $10,000. Well, that sounds pretty good. 10 grand, I can use 10 grand. But then I started thinking about it. Well, how much of that 10 grand am I going to see? Well, first, basically, what's my federal income tax going to take out of that? And I looked at the percentage I was paying. And then when you do, you're taking money in like that, that's not part of your salary, where you're paying Social Security and Medicare and all that stuff. You get basic self-employment tax. So basically you have to pay the 7% that you would normally pay and the 7% the employer paid, and all the Medicare and other taxes. So you're looking at, well, out of that 10,000, I'm going to lose 16%. And then I'm going to lose like, close to another 5% from the state. That's 21. So out of the 10,000, really, I'm only going to bring in 8,000. And then I have to go on research trips because I needed to do some things in Washington. I'd have to go up there, stay there a couple of days, and get some photographs and stuff for the book and pay for all that. And I estimated I'd lose another $2,000 in that. So now we're down to $6,000. And then I looked at how many hours. I mean, I'm pretty good. I've written, I published 10 books. I've written 12. So I know about how long it takes me to get X number of pages done, and how much work I'd have to do, and the research trips and all that stuff. And when I got done, I wasn't even making minimum wage. Now, if the book sold, hundreds of thousands of copies later, I'd get additional royalties. Then maybe I'd make that up. But few of my books they've done well enough to make me some income, but not well enough to make me rich. So I had to look at the possibility I'd get my $10,000, and I'd basically be busting my ass while I was still working full time. for a book that would do nothing to help me get promoted, because there were no more promotions. I'm too old to be moving around, so it's going to help me get another job. So basically, I'm not going to get much out of it. And basically, what I'd be doing is doing all this extra work for minimum wage. So I asked myself, if somebody said to me, hey, you're working full-time teaching and all this stuff, you want to come down to the 7-Eleven and work the counter at minimum wage when you're, during your off hours? I'd say, you effing crazy? Of course I'm not going to do that. So I turned the book deal down, and they were like astounded. Well, why did you do this? It's $10,000. But it's not $10,000. It just meant, busting my ass for about 8 to 9 months at minimum wage. So I said no. Again, I was losing, a quarter of it just to taxes. Actually, it was more like a third. Actually, I was losing taxes. It was 19 years. Yeah. I was losing by 30% of it to taxes, either federal or state. So I said no. I mean, that's the whole idea, that, if you tax something, you lessen it. People who work at the margins, who don't have to work a second job. I mean, I remember my father used to work a second job. He used to whine all the time about it, because they would take out, proportionally so much more money out of your second job, because it pushes you into a higher bracket, and then you pay more money. I mean, I know people, I won't mention any names, who are living together and not getting married, because if they get married and they have to pay, either married filing separately or filing jointly, they pay, tens of thousands of dollars more. So they don't get married. And I know that, we talk about why the numbers of people getting married are going down. It's one of the reasons, because if with both, it didn't matter so much when one person was working, but today, where men and women are likely equally working and equally making, pretty good money, you're going to pay through the nose for it. So that's the result. Rule number 2, you subsidize something, you get more of it. This is, again, something we know. We want people to buy electric cars or hybrids. What do? We subsidize them. You want people to put solar panels on their roof. What do? You subsidize them. You want more people to go to college. What do? You subsidize it. You give them low-rate loans. So we understand this intuitively. When you subsidize something, you get more of it. But look at our politics. The classic example, if you take, children born out of wedlock, statistically are more likely to end up in poverty. It's harder for the mother to work, not impossible. We don't have free child care or anything in this country to help out. So it's very difficult for her. So you're likely to end up with children, living in poverty. I mean, if my wife and I had split early on, and I had left her with the 2 kids, they both would have been raised basically in poverty. And instead, they weren't raised in poverty. So we understand this, but look at our policies. We have a policy, for this, unwed mothers, and we give them subsidies. We support them. We give them this, children, whatever the benefits package is called. And we've been doing this now for over a half century. And, we scratch our heads and say, why the rate of children born out of wedlock is going up so high. I mean, it's skyrocketed, not just for African Americans, but for everybody. It's like close to or over 50% for whites. And then we're surprised that this is happening. But what are we doing? We're subsidizing people who do that. You look at a country like Korea. I mean, their out of wedlock rate is like under 3%. In this country, it's like 50%. But they don't subsidize it there. It's still considered shameful. It's still considered bad. So people don't do it, or fewer people do it. Here, we subsidize it. I can remember, I actually knew somebody who their daughter was pregnant, and she was still in high school. And they said, oh, well, there are all these programs. It's not bad. It's not too bad, because there's all these programs in the school. They do this for the mothers and that for the mothers. And since she's under she gets free diapers and, blah, 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 blah. It'll be fine. That's nice to do all those things. And, I understand why we want to do those things. But the reality is, when you do that, you're going to get more of it. Or look at what's going on in LA now. They have a homeless problem. 60,000 people are homeless. So they started this, the first round of moving them into government-sponsored housing, what we used to call, low-income housing. And it's low-income housing in the sense that the people have no income. They're homeless by definition. They don't make any money. But it's not cheap housing. Actually, the housing units in the first round in California or Los Angeles came out to close to like $670,000, $690,000 a unit. That's not counting the cost of all the utilities and all that they're going to have to pay, because homeless people have no income to pay utilities. So you've got housing. We're giving homeless people in Los Angeles houses or apartments that are worth like $700,000. That's more than twice what the house I live in is worth. And I've had to bust my ass my entire life to be in a house that's paid off. So what's going to happen? Now, they think in LA, if they do this, it's going to solve the homeless problem. No, it's going to increase homelessness. I mean, if you're homeless and you're living on the street somewhere in Colorado, what are you going to do? I'm going to get on a Greyhound and go to LA, get in line. Maybe someday I'll get a $700,000 house for free. They're going to be the homeless magnet on the West Coast. If you're homeless, you're going to head to California. Not only are they going to take care of you, not only going to let you live anywhere you want in your little, tent crappy city and foul up the neighborhood. All that's okay. But you may actually get lucky and win the housing lottery and end up with a house worth more than $500,000 or an apartment worth more than $500,000. So we do these things, and then in 2 years from now they'll say, "My God, we had 60,000 homeless people. Now we have 80,000. Why did that happen? We were taking such good care of them." Again, you subsidize something, you're going to get more of it. People come across the border illegally. What do we do to them? Do we shoot them? No. Do we try to put a wall up to keep them out? No, we're not going to do that. What do? Well, we pick them up, we take care of them, we give them some help, and then we bus them out into the places, and they get, free education. In many states now, they get in-state tuition if they have to pay anything at all, or maybe they get no tuition. They get free health care, they get free education, they get some sort of living allotment. And then we scratch our heads and say, why are more people coming in illegally? Well, guess what? You subsidize something, you get more of it. I mean, this is common economic sense. And we understand it with simple things like subsidizing electric cars. But then when you get to the bigger things, our politicians take this intuitive understanding of the fundamentals of economics and they set it aside and they tell us that they don't matter. And they do this all the time. We can raise taxes as high as we want and it won't slow down the economy. We can subsidize all these things for people, but it's not going to make people do more of the same behavior that, nominally at least, we don't like. So again, it's just ridiculous. And then they get into all this economic complexities, and they bring on the economist who can talk you into a corner about anything. I mean, I think it was Harry Truman who said he got so sick of listening to economists. He made a remark once that the government should only hire one-armed economists, because anytime they'd come in and you talk to them, they'd say, "Well, on the one hand, well, on the other hand," and he didn't know what to make of it all, so he just wanted economists with only one arm. Third rule: there's no such thing as a business tax. And this is, we've known this since, I guess the first American to recognize this was Benjamin Franklin. He was also, as far as I can determine, the first American to use the term consumer. When the British got into trouble with us during the colonial period with internal taxes like the stamp tax, and they faced, growing revolt, their next alternative was to try a set of external taxes. These were taxes on trade. Basically, if you shipped something from the UK to the American colonies, it would be taxed as it came into the port or as it came out of Britain. These were external taxes. And they impressed on, Franklin. They said, "Well, Ben, stamp tax, okay, people are paying that, right out of their pockets. But these are external taxes. There are taxes on the shipping companies. There are taxes on the merchants. There are taxes on the corporations. People aren't paying these taxes." And Franklin said, nonsense. Ultimately, those business taxes, Franklin had been a businessman, an entrepreneur. He knew how it worked. The taxes that the businessmen have to pay work their way into the pricing. So when you buy the taxed product, externally taxed product in the American colonies, The consumer, the word he used, the consumer is actually paying the tax. It's just it's hidden in the price. So he said it doesn't matter. They're still going to be pissed off. And of course, the classic example of that was East India Company tea coming in, which was taxed at various spots, including the company. But the Americans understood what was happening. If they bought the British tea, they were paying the tax, even if it wasn't an internal tax. They knew it was a trick that the British were trying to pull a fast one on them. And that's true. I mean, I worked for a parking company in Philadelphia, and I was a supervisor for a while. I got to see the P&L statements, profits and loss. And when you looked at the sheet with the overhead, and part of the overhead were our taxes. And then it's out of a sheet with the overhead. Then from that, you determine your prices. Because these are our costs. Our target profit mark is X%. So you take that, you move that across, and now you got your price. When taxes go up, the prices go up. Now, were our consumers, were our customers coming into the lot paying those taxes directly? No, but they were paying them indirectly. Because as when the city jacked the taxes up real high at one point, and the purpose was to try to get more people to use mass transportation and not drive in the city. So what's the rule there? You tax something, you get less of it. So if you're taxing basically parking, if you drive your car into a city, you have to park it somewhere. So they jack up the prices of parking in the city with the assumption that fewer people will drive. And then they'll go on to the buses and the trains, which of course many of them did. But then of course they had to buy more buses and put up more trains. And these are high-paid union jobs that were the trains that go into Philadelphia. The commuter trains are already running at a deficit and are basically being subsidized by various local governments. So when they did that, the subsidies had to go up. So they end up, they pay it over here or you pay it over there. But, our prices went up like a lot. They almost doubled for all-day parking. And, we weren't paying that. The consumer was paying. Our customers had to pay it. Now, of course, we did get fewer cars in. I mean, we used to do 700 cars, 750 a day, and we'd go down to like 600. What did that mean? Well, because we had fewer cars, we didn't need as many people. I mean, during the day, we used to run 10 men who would fetch and retrieve the cars. We went down to 6. Just at our lot alone, 4 men lost their job. And then you could spread that around all the other lots around the city. Everybody was laying people off because the business dried up. So there were losses there. And of course, you have to understand those guys weren't paying taxes anymore. Now some of them were collecting benefits instead of paying benefits. Anyway, it can look very complex, but the bottom line is simple. There's no such thing as a business tax. It's the biggest scam that there is in American politics, because your politicians will come, they'll be out there on the stump or on TV, and they'll be telling you, we're not going to raise your taxes. We're going to raise the taxes on these evil corporations. Corporations do not pay taxes. Let me repeat that. Corporations do not pay taxes, period. Even when and I'm not talking about, Amazon's not paying any federal tax. That's not what I'm talking about. Even if they have to pay taxes, they're not paying them, because any taxes they pay are offset by price hikes that you pay. So when you see a politician telling you, well, we're going to raise all this money for, like Elizabeth Warren, we're going to have free education, we're going to have free housing, we're going to have free this, we're going to have free that. But it's not going to cost you anything. We're going to charge those big corporations, those 1%ers and 10%ers, they're going to have to pay their fair share, which comes right out of feudalism and when the church controlled things. But that's another video. They're going to pay that. You're not going to pay it. That's bullshit. We're going to jack up the taxes that corporations pay. Their prices are going to go up. And then I'm going to have to pay those prices. I'm going to pay for the taxes anyway. Again, businesses do not pay taxes. They collect taxes from you on behalf of the government. And it's a big scam to make you think that the other evil guy is getting taxed and you're getting away with something. You're not. As business taxes go up, prices go up, you have to pay more. So every time they take more money from businesses, it's a scam. They're really taking it from you, but you're too stupid to understand that ultimately you're going to have to pay them. And of course, that's what they're betting on. That you're too dumb to understand that businesses do not pay taxes. They collect taxes from you for the government. And of course, anytime you do things less directly, it's going to cost you even more. It'd probably be much more efficient just to raise your income tax than to do the collection via the businesses. There should be no business tax. That would be no corporate taxes, no business taxes, nothing. Because we're paying them all anyway. It really doesn't matter. And again, it's just a big scam. The fourth rule is, I think, still relatively simple and intuitive. And that is the economy is class blind. And this is somewhat like Rule 3. But the idea is they like to tell you that, well, we're not taxing you. You know, we're going after the evil corporations, the big corporations, the 1%. They need to pay their fair share. The economy is, think of the economy as a machine. And the fuel the machine runs on is the money supply. It's how much money's out there. I mean, when the Fed wants the economy to pick up, when it's getting slowing down, what do? They cut rates. They cut the amount that the commercial banks and the others have to hold in physical terms, basically, which means they can, if they increase it, they make it hold more, they have less money to loan out to business startups and stuff like that, or people who need personal loans for, you know, to send a kid to school or stuff like that. If you want to stimulate the economy, you know, they lower that so that the banks have more money to loan out, and then the economy hopefully will start picking up. So, I mean, it's a pretty understandable, you know, idea that the money supply contracts, the economy slows down. If it expands, the economy goes up. If you expand it too much, you end up with inflation. But that's the bottom line. This is the machine, and the money supply fuels it. When you tax people or businesses, any entity, you're pulling money out of the system. And you can say, well, it goes to government, but then it gets spent. But the government wastes so much of it. I mean, you know, again, the low-income housing in LA end up costing, you know, low-income units end up costing $700,000. Which is like double what they were expected to cost, because everything the government does is, so it's just waste a lot of money. I mean, I could give you plenty of examples. I worked for the government for 8 years, and I saw them how they, you know, it's true they waste money. I worked for DOD. We wasted money. But when you looked at why we were wasting money, it was always some congressional law or regulation that made us do things in this stupid fashion. You know, my class example was I had to take a bus one time up to the National Archives, and I said, do we like petty cash? Oh, no. You know, somebody could steal that. So we're not allowed to have a petty cash fund. I said, so what do? Do I have to pay for it myself? They said, oh, no, you come home, you write out you can get reimbursed. You know, and then it costs like $1.30. So I actually just figured, let me see what happens to get that $1.30 back. Well, it took about a month. And by my calculation, looking at all the things that have been done, redone, this and that, it probably cost the government $75 to reimburse me $1.30. That's why when you pull money out of the government, it doesn't get back into the economy in a very efficient manner. But that's the problem. The economy's, you know, it's class blind. When you pull money out of the economy, it doesn't matter if it came out of, you know, Donald Trump's pockets or Warren Buffett's pockets or Joe Blow the welder's pockets. It's gone, and it slows the economy down. Like I said, the economy is class blind. Now, basically, every economist knows that there's a relationship between money supply and how the economy operates. That's the fundamentals of what the Fed does. If we didn't know that and understand that, there wouldn't be a Federal Reserve System. So we do understand that, and yet, you know, our politicians have got to tell you, well, we're pulling money out of the economy. It's coming out of his pocket, so don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. You got all these spending bills they're talking about, you know, 20 billion here and 10 trillion there and 10 trillion here and another 20 trillion there and 25 trillion over here. We're going to do all this stuff. And we're going to pull trillions and trillions of dollars out of the economy. But it's all coming out of the pockets of the 10 percenters or the 1 percenters, depending on who you talk to. But this is going to have no effect on the economy. No bullshit. You pull that money out, even if you're taking it out of their pockets, the 10 or 1%ers up at the top, it's still going to slow the economy down. If it's not in the economy will slow down. The economy does not care if it came out of the pockets of somebody who's poor or somebody who's rich. We have a progressive tax system, and that's fine. But that's for us. That's to make us feel good. It's not for the economy. The economy, again, is class blind. The economy doesn't care who gets taxed. All the economy knows is the money's missing. I'm slowing down. I don't have as much fuel, so I'm going to start going slower. So we'll do all these things, and they'll, we're taxing the 1%ers, solidarity, social justice. And then, we'll have negative growth or 1% growth, and we'll plod along with higher unemployment rates and everything. And then, people will scratch their heads and say, well, why did this happen? Why was the economy so slow when Obama was president? He was doing all this stuff to speed it up. Yeah, he put it, he pumped $1 trillion into the economy. But where did it go? If you look at the period with the stimulus, when he was pumping $1 trillion into the economy, at the same time, gas had gone up to $4 from $2. And you take all the miles that people drive in this country, and you put that over like a 3-year period, that $1 trillion we pumped into the economy was getting sucked out and going to places like Canada, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, where we get most of our oil in those days. And it was gone. So, so the stimulus didn't work. Well, the stimulus might have worked if gas had stayed at $2 a gallon. Well, why wasn't gas at $2 a gallon? Well, it's a long, complex stuff and another entire video there. But today, gas is, it's not $4, it's not $2, but it's, right now around here, it's like $2.30, give or take a couple pennies. So when you put money in the economy, a lot of the oil we're getting now is from the U.S. So we're not sending the money to Canada or Saudi Arabia or Mexico. We're sending it to Texas or North Dakota or places like that. So it stays, in our economy. So even if gases go up, it won't have the same negative impact as they did during the Obama administration. Now, you can't blame Obama for the fact that gas went up to $4. That was happening before he went in. I mean, that's not his fault. If anybody, if it's any president's fault, it would be George Bush's fault. But the problem was, what did Obama do to try to get gas prices down? And the answer is nothing. If anything, he was doing things that would have kept them up, fighting the extension of pipelines, doing what he could to stop domestic production, doing what they could to stop fracking, doing what they could to, basically force us to use foreign oil so that all this money was getting sucked out of the economy. So it's not that the higher gas prices were his fault, but he didn't do anything. He got in the way of things that would have increased domestic spending. And of course, despite that, by the time Trump got in, it's not necessarily his fault or anything he did that they were going down. They were going down, but that was in spite of Obama, not because of Obama. And when Trump got in, he actually released many of those regulations and restrictions to try to get it even going faster. So that today, the United States is the largest oil producer in the world, which is important. Not just that we have our own oil and we don't have to rely on all these people. I mean, people we relied most on, most of our oil didn't come from the Middle East. It came from Canada. Edmonton Oilers, that's where the oil was coming from. And Mexico, and before that, Venezuela. But that's another story. But the money now stays in the economy. When we buy our oil, even if it goes up to $4 or $5, at least the money's still here. It's not going over there, which is still better. But again, the bottom line is the economy is class blind. All the economy knows is money's missing. I'm slowing down. It doesn't matter whose pocket you take out of. And you have to understand that. So when you see politicians telling you they're going to pay for all these benefits that they're going to hand out to people by only taxing the rich, and don't think it's like, oh, well, that's okay, that won't hurt me. It will. As I said, first off, when they tax these companies, the prices are going to go up and you're going to pay them anyway. And then secondly, because they're yanking all this money out of a machine, an economy that's class blind, it's going to slow down no matter what they say. And you want to live in a, with 1% growth and 10% unemployment, vote Democratic. That's about all I can tell you. So those are the rules, I apply. I think they're pretty simple. They're all basically intuitive if you think about them at the simple level. The problem is what our politicians do is apply them at other levels, at more complex levels, and then they befuddle you with economic jargon and economic experts coming in and telling you that, oh yeah, we're going to raise capital gains taxes, but it's not going to hinder capital investment. I saw that and I thought, not only is Obama saying that and people in his cabinet, but they bring on, some economist from the University of Chicago who says that, well, yeah, we can raise capital gains taxes and it won't hinder capital accumulation, capital investment. That's bullshit. And, the problem with economists, just like everybody else, is they're polluted by politics and they set aside, the common sense things that they understand. And these rules are simple, intuitive, common sense rules. And just all you have to do is when you see people talking about things, understand the crap that they're feeding you about, how they can violate these rules with impunity. We're only going to tax the rich. You're not going to have to pay for this. None of this is going to impact the economy. Actually, it's going to help the economy. This will make it a healthier economy because the people at the bottom are getting their fair share. Like I said, it's all that stuff's right out of. That's not socialism. It's worse than that. It's feudalism. I mean, that's basically, in many ways, what the elite in this country are pushing us towards, a sort of feudalism where we're the serfs, and we're all equally poor, equally defenseless. And they're the ones, with the carrying the swords around the streets or with armed bodyguards, deciding, how much we should make and how much we should pay, just like the aristocrats and the clergy did in the old days. It's a return to feudalism. In many ways, socialism is the problem with socialism. It's this a dressed up social theory of feudalism, which feudalism didn't really have a social philosopher pushing for it. Anyway, those are Mike Palmer's rules, and I stick to them, and consider them yourself.